Hi everyone, this is Mike Thoming again with CIT 360. Today we're going to talk a little bit about JUnit tests. JUnit is a pretty cool little feature, and NetBeans is well equipped to work with it. In fact, I believe if you've got, I didn't even have to install it, but if you check your plugins and list of installed plugins, see, for example, I have JUnit installed here. And so it's already here by default. I don't think I had to do anything extra. And we won't go through this too in depth, but you're able to build tests for just about any Java file that you create. So I'm just right-clicking on this random one I have here. And so under the Tools menu, you have the bottom option, Create Update Tests. Gives you a few options to select here. Choose the name that you want to call it. It usually just gives you a default of your original file name test at the end of that name. And so, yeah, so it created that file for me. It doesn't have everything you need here yet. You actually have to build some more code yourself, but it does create it with, create this Java class with the appropriate imports for your JUnit tests. And then you can get busy building those. So that's what I did originally, and that's how I got my other test here. I'm going to get this one out of the way. All right, so I have a list test that uses my original list Java file. And this program originally, I'll just play this for you real quick. A user is able to reply to these prompts that it receives. So I'm going to put in a name, something else I can put in, another name, and then my last item. All right, so that's my list. It asks some questions. What would you like to view again? Show you that. What would you like to change? Change that one to Jim. So my new list is this. I'm going to have it look for Bill. Nope, Bill was not found there. So that's my entire program for this list.java file. So my list test file is going to run some tests against that type of an array list. So I created this using the same right-click, tools, create update test option, and it gave me this file, and then I added everything inside of my public list test class here. So I did examples according to what were asked for in the assignment. We have an assert equals, assert same, not null, null, true, false, array equals, and then a couple of assert that examples. But some of what I built for the structure of this, I created a array list A, and I populated it with all of these items using this code. And then I created a couple of just basic integer array lists and put some numbers in them. Two of them are the same. That'll be important in a minute. And then one of them is different. That just helps us with some of the comparisons that our JUnit tests are doing. So let's jump into that. The first one is assert equals. So this is making sure that two items that you state are actually equal. If they are, then it'll return that as a successful test. If they're not, then it'll say that test failed. So my first element, you can see here, I set equal to a string Mike. And of course, then I set list A first equal to first element. So the first item that I added was this string Mike. And so that's definitely going to succeed because I've obviously made that true. Now, if I tried to make this equal to the second element in my list, which in this case was Heather, that would fail. So I'm going to just run that real quick and show you. Goes through it, and yep, it says my object failed, test failed. It was looking for, oh, darn it, yeah. It was expecting a value of Mike, because that was what was the first element, but it got a value of Heather because that was in the second element. So that failed. But if I set that back to 0 again and rerun that, this time everything will be successful and happy. Yep, so 100% pass this time. Assert same is a similar function, but not exactly. But I do still state the first item that I want it to use as a comparison, and then compare that to the second item. And that was successful. Also, same idea though, if I were to change this and have it compare it to another item in my element, in my array that I know is not equal, and then run that, it's going to fail. And it says again, I expected Heather, which is the value of the second element variable, and it was not. It found Hannah, which was actually the third element. So that test works like it's supposed to. Fails when it should fail, succeeds when it should succeed. We run it one more time, and now everything was successful because we changed that back to a value that makes them equal. Assert not same, it obviously does the opposite. So this time I'm checking my third element, which in this case was a string called Hannah, and I'm comparing it to the first element in my array, which as we saw before was Mike. So as long as those two things don't match, it's going to believe that this test was successful. So you have to make sure you don't get mixed up on the double negative there. Assert that it's not the same, and then if it's not the same, then it's true. Same thing with assert not null. So we're just going to check to make sure whatever I have stated here is not a null string. So we're looking at the second or the third element in my array, which I've set equal to a string called Hannah. So that test is successful. We could make it fail by making it null. So let's see, I set fourth element equal to null, so that would be a number 3 here. So if I save that and run it, we're going to have one failure, and this is at row 52, which is, yep, where we're at. Oh, wait. Yeah, row 52 here, assert not null. This failed because element number 4 is null. And remember, we're dealing with a zero base counting here, so number 3 in my array is actually the fourth element because we have a 0 element at the beginning. All right, so I'm going to set that back to, let's see, oh, no, sorry, this was the one we were dealing with. I'm going to set that back to, getting confused here. 3 is what we had, right? Assert that it's not null. Oh, right. So we want that to be 2 or any of the others that are not null. So we'll set that that way and run again, and we should get 100% success this time, and we do. All right, so that's not same, not null. Again, watch out for those double negatives. That'll get you turned around sometimes. Then we want to assert null. We want to double check that something is null. And so we have our fourth element in my array, which I did set as null, you can see. So that's clearly why that test is successful. We have a little different one, assert true and assert false. These use relational operators to verify that the element you specify is equal to or not equal to whatever you declare. So in this case, I have my fifth element, which is set to an integer of 5, and I use the relational operator to compare that to a number that I declare here. Now, again, if I set that to a 6, that's going to make this test fail because it expects them to be true. It expects that comparison to return a Boolean true value. And so because I made that change, it's not going to, and it will fail. So we see again, Java line 56, it failed. What we wanted to be true was not. All right. So we see the working and broken versions of that assert value. Assert false works the same way. In this case, we're saying it should be false that the fifth element is greater than 5. and the fifth element actually is 5, so it's never going to be greater than 5. So that is considered to be a successful test because this returns a false Boolean value, right? Okay, getting towards the end here, we have an assert array equals, and for this I created a couple of different lists, just basic integer lists, not like the array list I've been using before. So again, I have 2 of them that are exact matches. They contain 5 elements of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So this assert that function checks them to make sure, in this case, that list, oh wait, assert array equals, assert array equals is checking to make sure that list B and list C are the same. And again, it finds that they are, so it considers that to be a successful test, so that test passes. Now, if I were to change this to list D, you can see I made this one a little bit different. Instead of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So those will not compare favorably, and the test will fail. Yep. So it didn't even do a full comparison from what I can gather here. It just checked the first element of the array, and it expected a 10, as was in the first element in list B, but it found a 20, which, as we saw here, was the first element in list D. So that's why that failed, just like we expected. We'll change that back to C so the test will succeed, and that's how an assert array equals works. And then finally, we have a couple of assert that options. I wanted to use both an is and an is not to show both ways that that can happen. And again, in this case, I'm just comparing a list to itself, so clearly those should match. Assert that list B is list B. Now, I believe I could change this to list C because those 2 lists are identical. Let's see if that'll still be a successful test. Oh, wait, ran the wrong thing. Okay, run again. And it does consider that a successful test. So it's not like it's looking to see if the list name is the same. It's checking to see if the values inside the list match. And they do, even though the list names are different. So that's why that's considered to be a successful test. Yeah, I can just leave that like that. It's fine. So then we're doing kind of the opposite here. It's still using an assert that operator, but it's comparing list B and making sure that it is not the same as list D. So, and we know that they are not, again, because these values that I mentioned earlier. So that's why that test is considered successful. Now, again, if I had it comparing the one list to itself, in this case, this test would fail because it's wanting to make sure that the first stated item is not the same as the second stated item. And so when you're using the same item for both declarations, then that's why it's going to fail. So, yep, here we go. It expected to not be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, but it found that it in fact was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So that's not allowed. That's considered a failed test. Makes sense. Back to what's considered to be a successful test. We run this one more time. All of our tests run successfully. So that's just a quick little example of what you can do with some JUnit tests and operators and all these different kind of assert values. So this is obviously pretty powerful. Knowing that most developers don't like to do software testing, this can help speed up the process and make it a little less painful for them, and still get good results and know that your software is working the way that you want it to. So that's our example for today. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you again next time.